My son's voice cut through the family gathering like a knife, each word deliberate and cold as winter frost. "Stop calling me your child," he said, his finger pointing at me with the kind of precision he must use in court. "From today, I have no mother." The champagne glass in Cousin Linda's hand stopped midway to her lips. My brother Thomas, who'd been laughing at something just seconds before, turned toward us with his mouth still open. The entire room, 37 family members gathered for what they thought was a celebration, fell into the kind of silence that makes your ears ring. I felt my knees buckle slightly, but I gripped the edge of the mahogany dining table my husband and I had bought for our 10th anniversary. Every eye in that room was on me, boring into my soul, waiting for my response. Some looked shocked, others confused, and a few, God help me, a few looked like they knew something I didn't. My own son stood there in his three-piece suit, the one I'd helped him pick for his first big case, staring at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered into the wrong house. I lowered my head, unable to meet anyone's gaze. The shame burned through my chest like acid, even though I didn't understand what I'd done to deserve this public execution. My weathered hands trembled as I tried to steady myself, and that's when it happened. When I raised my hand to wipe away a tear that hadn't yet fallen, the overhead chandelier caught the gold of my bracelet, the one I'd worn for the first time today. The engraving glinted in the light, and Michael's sharp intake of breath was audible even from across the room. His lawyer's composure cracked as he read those words. And then, like dominoes falling, everyone close enough to see went rigid. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet. It was the kind of terrified stillness that comes before lightning strikes. Before we start, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. My name is Margaret Chen, and at 68 years old, I thought I'd already lived through my hardest days. I was wrong. You see, I'm not the kind of woman people usually notice in a crowd. 5'3", silver hair I keep in the same simple bun I've worn since nursing school, hands that show every year of hard work in their wrinkles and spots. But these hands, these tired, old hands, they held my children through every fever, every nightmare, every heartbreak. They worked 18-hour shifts at Columbus General Hospital while my husband Robert fought his losing battle with pancreatic cancer. They stirred pots of soup at 4 a.m. before my day shifts and mended clothes at midnight after the evening ones. I raised 3 children in a 2-bedroom house in the modest part of Worthington, Ohio. Michael, my eldest, the one who just disowned me in front of everyone, was my miracle baby. 5 miscarriages before him, and when he finally arrived, screaming and perfect, I promised God I'd give him everything. Jennifer came 2 years later, my careful planner, always organizing her dolls in perfect rows. Then David, my gentle soul, who brought home injured birds and cried at sad commercials. For 40 years, every decision I made was for them. I wore the same winter coat for a decade so Michael could have his graphing calculator for advanced mathematics. I missed my father's funeral in California because Jennifer had her championship debate that same weekend. I emptied our retirement fund when David needed rehabilitation after his accident, never once complaining about returning to work at 62. My children were my purpose, my pride, my everything. But standing there, in that silent room, with my son's rejection still echoing off the walls, I realized that sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes sacrifice becomes expectation. Sometimes the children you die for grow up to become strangers who see you not as their mother, but as an obstacle to their inheritance. Sunday mornings in my home had a rhythm as reliable as heartbeat. I'd wake at 5:30 a.m. without an alarm, my body trained by 4 decades of early shifts, and pad quietly to the kitchen in the fleece slippers Jennifer bought me 3 Christmases ago. The coffee would brew while I pulled out my mother's recipe box, its corners soft from years of handling, the index cards inside yellowed but still readable in her careful script. By 6 a.m., the house would fill with the smell of cinnamon rolls rising. their sweet aroma drifting up the stairs where Robert's photograph sat on my nightstand, forever frozen in his gentle smile. The dining room was my sanctuary, small but warm, with walls painted the soft yellow Robert had surprised me with for our 30th anniversary. Sunshine, he'd called it, because that's what you bring to every room. The table could squeeze in 12 if we used the leaves, and every Sunday we did. Michael would arrive first, always punctual, usually by 11:30 with his wife Patricia and their twin boys, Adam and Nathan. The boys would burst through the door calling out, "Grandma Maggie!" and I'd catch them up in hugs that smelled like the chocolate chip cookies I always had waiting. Jennifer would follow with her husband Richard and their daughter Sophie, juggling casserole dishes and the fruit salad she insisted on bringing, even though I told her not to trouble herself. She'd kiss my cheek and immediately start setting the table with the good china. My mother's wedding set that she'd always admired. David would come last, perpetually running 10 minutes late, his hair still messy from sleep, carrying grocery store flowers that he'd apologetically thrust at me with that crooked smile that reminded me so much of his father. The menu never varied much, and that was part of the comfort. Pot roast so tender it fell apart at the touch of a fork, made the way Robert's mother taught me, with carrots and potatoes that had simmered for hours in the juices. Green beans from my garden when they were in season, frozen ones I'd put up myself when they weren't. Michael's cornbread made from scratch with real buttermilk and a touch of honey. Jennifer's favorite coleslaw with the tangy dressing that took 3 attempts to perfect back when she was in high school. David's requested mac and cheese, which he claimed nobody made quite like Mom, though it was just the simple recipe from the back of the Elbow pasta box with extra sharp cheddar. After dinner, we'd move to the living room where the grandchildren would perform their latest school presentations or piano pieces. Adam was learning violin, Nathan preferred drums much to everyone's ears' dismay, and Sophie had just started ballet. I'd sit in my rocking chair, the one Robert built with his own hands when I was pregnant with Michael, and watch my family with the kind of contentment that money could never buy. Patricia would help clear dishes. Richard would discuss his latest construction projects with Michael, and David would sprawl on the floor playing with the kids. The garden was where we'd end up as the afternoon sun grew gentle. I'd grown tomatoes and peppers, roses and daisies, creating a small paradise in our quarter-acre lot. The children would chase butterflies while the adults sat on the patio. Robert and I had laid ourselves, stone by stone, the summer before he got sick. Jennifer would always comment on how well the roses were doing. Michael would offer to help with the heavier yard work, and David would steal cherry tomatoes right off the vine, just like when he was 7. These Sundays were my evidence that I'd done something right, that all those years of sacrifice had built something beautiful and lasting. When neighbors passed by and saw us all together, they'd wave and smile, often commenting later about what a lovely family I had. "You're so lucky, Margaret," Mrs. Patterson from next door would say. "Your children still come home." Looking back now, I should have noticed when the rhythm began to break. But when you've built your entire life on trust and love, you don't see the cracks forming until the whole foundation gives way. It started on a rainy Sunday in March, the kind of day where the Ohio sky hangs low and gray like a wet blanket. I'd made Michael's favorite, beef stroganoff from scratch, with the expensive mushrooms from the specialty store downtown. The dining room was set for 12, steam rising from the freshly baked rolls when my phone buzzed. Michael's name appeared on the screen, and something in my chest tightened before I even answered. "Can't make it today, Mom," he said, his voice clipped and professional like I was a client he was rescheduling. "Big case prep, you understand." The line went dead before I could respond, before I could tell him that Adam had made the honor roll and wanted to tell Uncle Mike first, or that I'd finally found the vintage baseball card he'd been searching for at an estate sale. I stood there holding my silent phone, looking at enough food to feed an army, while rain streaked down the windows like tears. The following Sunday, he called again. This time it was a client emergency. The Sunday after that, Patricia was sick. Then the twins had a tournament. Always something. always last minute, always delivered in that same distant tone that made me feel like I was bothering him. Jennifer tried to smooth it over during those dinners, filling his empty chair with extra chatter, but even 6-year-old Sophie noticed. "Where's Uncle Michael?" she'd asked, her little face scrunched with concern. "Doesn't he love Grandma's cooking anymore?" The real crack in my faith came on a Thursday afternoon. I'd driven to Jennifer's house to drop off a quilt I'd finished for Sophie's bed, one with butterflies and flowers that had taken me 3 months to complete. Jennifer was in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, and she hadn't heard me come in through the open garage. "I know, Michael was at the country club all Sunday," she was saying. "Patricia posted pictures on Facebook, but Mom doesn't use social media, so—" She turned and saw me standing there, holding that carefully wrapped quilt, and her face went white. "Oh, Mom, I was just—" She fumbled for words while I stood frozen, processing what I'd heard. The country club, all Sunday, while I'd sat alone eating leftover stroganoff for 3 days because it was too much food for one person, too much love with nowhere to go. "Maybe he went after work?" I suggested weakly, hating the pleading tone in my own voice. Jennifer's eyes darted away, the same tell she'd had since childhood when she was hiding something. "Yeah, maybe," she mumbled, suddenly very interested in wiping down her already spotless counter. I drove home on autopilot, my mind racing through recent memories like a detective reviewing evidence. Michael's new Porsche that he'd bought without mentioning it to me, only discovering it when I saw it at the grocery store. The way he'd started calling me mother instead of mom, like we were characters in some formal play. How he'd stopped hugging me hello, offering instead a brief pat on the shoulder like I was a business acquaintance. That evening, I did something I'd never done before. I looked up Patricia's Facebook page on the computer David had set up for me. There they were, photo after photo from the country club. Michael in his golf attire, laughing with men I didn't recognize. Patricia raising a mimosa with her friends. The twins in the pool with other children. Timestamps showing 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 3:30 p.m., all the hours when my dining room sat empty, when I'd wrapped up his portion to send home later, when I'd made excuses to David about his brother being such a dedicated lawyer. But what hurt most was a comment Patricia had made under one photo. "Perfect Sundays without obligations." Without obligations. Is that what I'd become? An obligation? A duty to be avoided? I closed the laptop and sat in Robert's chair, watching the sun set through the window he'd installed so I could see my garden from inside. For the first time since his death 5 years ago, I felt truly alone. I spent the next 2 weeks constructing elaborate excuses in my mind, each one more desperate than the last. Maybe Patricia had meant obligations like yard work or house repairs. Maybe the country club was where Michael met with important clients on weekends. Golf course deals were common in his profession, weren't they? I even convinced myself that he was planning something special for my upcoming 69th birthday in May. Yes, that had to be it. He was coordinating with his siblings, needed free Sundays to arrange something wonderful, and Patricia was helping keep the secret. I threw myself into this fantasy with the determination of a woman who couldn't bear to face the alternative. I cleaned the house from top to bottom, organized photo albums, and even started planning the menu for my birthday dinner. I'd make Michael's favorite chocolate cake from scratch, the one with the ganache that took 3 hours but was worth every minute when I saw his face light up. While folding laundry, I practiced my surprised expression in the mirror, imagining their faces when they realized I'd never suspected a thing. When David called to check on me that Wednesday, I was almost cheerful. "Your brother's just been so busy with work," I told him, stirring a pot of soup I probably wouldn't finish alone. "You know how dedicated he is. He's probably going to make partners soon." David was quiet for a moment before responding. "Mom, has he talked to you about anything important lately?" My heart jumped. There it was, confirmation of my birthday surprise theory. "No, sweetie, why do you ask?" I said, playing along. "No reason," David muttered. "Just call me if you need anything, okay?" I even drove past Michael's office building one evening around 8 p.m., telling myself I was just happening to be in the neighborhood after visiting the fabric store. His car wasn't in the parking garage. The security guard, whom I'd gotten to know over the years from my occasional lunch deliveries, mentioned he hadn't seen Mr. Chen work late in months. "Must be nice, having regular hours now," he'd said with a smile. I smiled back, my cheeks aching from the effort, and agreed that yes, it was wonderful he was finding work-life balance. The worst part was how I started lying to others to protect the illusion. When Mrs. Patterson asked why she hadn't seen Michael's car in my driveway lately, I told her he was taking a special certification course on Sundays. When my church friend Dorothy invited me to join their Sunday lunch group since "you must be lonely with the kids so busy," I declined, insisting my family dinners were as regular as ever. I even set the table for 12 that fourth Sunday, took a photo, and sent it to my sister in California with the caption, "Getting ready for the gang." But you can only pretend for so long before reality starts seeping through the cracks like water through a dam. I found myself staring at old photos on the mantel. Michael's law school graduation where he'd lifted me off the ground in a hug, his wedding where he'd cried during the mother-son dance, the candid from last Christmas where he was helping me in the kitchen, flour in his hair, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember anymore. I started having imaginary conversations with him while gardening. "You're probably protecting a witness," I'd tell the tomato plants. "Or maybe there's a case that's really weighing on you," I'd whisper to the roses. "You always did take things so seriously, even as a little boy." The neighbors probably thought I was going senile, talking to my vegetables, but it was better than acknowledging the growing void where my eldest son used to be. That Saturday night, I couldn't sleep. I made myself warm milk with honey, Robert's remedy for restlessness, and sat at the kitchen table where we'd helped Michael with 40 years of homework. My reflection in the dark window looked older than I remembered, more fragile. "Stop being silly, Margaret," I told myself firmly. "You raised a good boy. There's an explanation for everything." But even as I said it, my voice sounded hollow in the empty kitchen, like I was trying to convince a stranger of something we both knew wasn't true. The attic had been on my cleaning list for 2 years, ever since Robert passed. Every time I climbed those pull-down stairs, memories would overwhelm me. His old uniforms, our wedding album, boxes labeled in his careful handwriting, and I'd retreat, promising myself I'd tackle it next month. But that Tuesday morning in April, with another empty Sunday behind me and too much nervous energy to contain, I finally faced those dusty rafters. I was sorting through a box marked Michael College when I found it. His old laptop, the one we'd bought him for his sophomore year, silver and scratched from years of use. He'd upgraded so many times since then, always needing the latest technology for work. This relic had been forgotten, buried under yearbooks and old term papers. I set it aside initially, planning to ask him if he wanted it for the boys, maybe for their first computer lessons. But as afternoon sun slanted through the small attic window, curiosity got the better of me. The laptop still had charge, surprisingly, and when it flickered to life, I felt like I was time traveling. The desktop wallpaper was a photo of our whole family at Lake Erie, all of us sandy and sunburned, grinning at the camera. Michael couldn't have been more than 25. His email was still logged in, Gmail remembering passwords from a decade ago. I wasn't snooping. That's what I need you to understand. I was looking for photos, especially ones from Robert's last good summer when Michael had taken us all to Put-in-Bay. I clicked on the email icon, planning to check if he'd sent any photos to himself back then. But the inbox refreshed automatically, and suddenly I was looking at recent emails, current ones. Apparently, Michael had set up email forwarding years ago and forgotten about it. The subject line that stopped my heart read, "Re-Margaret Chen Property Assessment, Confidential." My maiden name was Wilson, but there was only one Margaret Chen connected to Michael. Me. With trembling fingers, I clicked open the thread. The sender was someone named Derek Lawson from Lawson Real Estate Development. As I read, the warm attic suddenly felt Arctic cold. Michael, as discussed, once we secure the property transfer, we can move forward with the demolition. The corner lot is perfect for the mixed-use development. Conservative estimate puts the land value at $400,000. Potentially more if we can acquire the adjacent Patterson property as well. The key is getting your mother to sign without understanding the full scope. The conservatorship angle you suggested is brilliant. No one questions a son looking after his aging mother. I read it 3 times before the words actually penetrated. Demolition. My home. The house Robert and I had saved for, bled for, raised our children in. They wanted to tear it down. But worse than that was Michael's response, dated just 3 days ago. Derek, the timeline needs to move up. She's getting suspicious about the missed dinners. I've got Dr. Harriet Klein ready to testify about her diminished capacity. Cost me a fortune, but she's convincing. The Patterson property is a separate issue. But once we control Mom's assets, I can probably pressure the old lady next door to sell. She trusts my mother. We'll make the Sunday gathering look like a family intervention. Public pressure plus medical testimony equals signatures. Jennifer and David are on board for their cut. The laptop slipped from my numb fingers onto a box of Christmas decorations. The plastic reindeer inside jingling mockingly. Jennifer and David knew. My babies, all 3 of them, plotting to destroy everything Robert and I had built, to declare me incompetent. The dimmed capacity he mentioned, I just completed the New York Times crossword puzzle that morning in pen. I volunteered teaching English to immigrants at the library. I managed my own investments, modest as they were. But none of that mattered if your own children testified against you. I sat in that stifling attic, surrounded by the artifacts of a life spent loving 3 children who saw me as nothing more than a property deed to be transferred. Downstairs, the kitchen timer went off. Cookies for the church bake sale, made with love by a woman whose own son had just priced her life at $400,000. Demolition included. I couldn't wait. Every instinct told me to be strategic, to gather more information. But the mother in me needed to hear Michael deny it, needed to look into the eyes of the boy I'd carried for 9 months and see some trace of humanity left. So I drove to his office that Thursday afternoon, the printed emails folded in my purse, like evidence of a crime I still couldn't quite believe had been committed. His secretary, Paula, brightened when she saw me. "Mrs. Chen, it's been so long. Mr. Chen is just finishing up a call." She whispered conspiratorially, "He's been so stressed lately. Maybe a visit from Mom is just what he needs." The irony of her kindness almost broke me. I sat in the waiting area staring at his law degree on the wall, the one I'd framed myself, crying with pride the day he passed the bar. When his office door opened, Michael's face cycled through expressions like a slot machine. Surprise, annoyance, then a carefully constructed mask of concern. "Mother, is everything all right? You should have called." Not Mom. Mother. When had that started? He gestured me in, checking his watch like I was eating into billable hours. His office was immaculate, all leather and dark wood, photos of Patricia and the boys positioned where clients could see them. No pictures of me, I noticed. No trace of the woman who'd worked herself to the bone to put him through school. I sat across from his massive desk, feeling small and shabby in my cardigan and comfortable shoes. "Michael," I started, my voice steadier than I expected. "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." He leaned back, fingers steepled like he was humoring a child. "Of course, Mother. What's troubling you?" I pulled out the emails, unfolded them carefully, and placed them on his pristine desk. Watching his face change was like watching storm clouds gather. First confusion, then recognition, then something cold and calculating that I'd never seen before. This wasn't my Michael. This was Attorney Chen, the shark his colleagues praised, the one who never lost a case. "You went through my things?" He didn't deny it, didn't explain, just attacked. It was your old laptop in my attic, I said quietly. I was looking for photos of Dad. He stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked downtown Columbus. You don't understand the situation, Mother. You're getting older. The house is too much for you. The maintenance, the taxes. We're trying to help you transition to something more manageable. By declaring me incompetent? By selling my home to developers? My voice cracked. Michael, I taught you to tie your shoes in that house. Your father died in that house. How could you? Dad's dead, Mother. He whirled around, his face flushed. He's been dead for 5 years, and you're still living like he's coming home, setting his place at dinner, keeping his slippers by the bed. It's not healthy. You need help. So you decided to steal from me? To conspire with your siblings behind my back? He laughed then, a bitter sound that cut deeper than any harsh word could. Steal? I'm trying to maximize the value of an asset that's being wasted. Do you know what that land is worth? What we could do with that money? The boys' college funds, Patricia's medical bills from her surgery last year? Real problems, Mother. Current problems, not shrines to the past. Patricia's surgery? I stood, my legs shaking. The one I gave you $30,000 for? From my retirement account? His silence told me everything. There had been no surgery. And Jennifer, David, they're part of this? They understand reality, he said coldly. That house is worth more than you'll need for whatever time you have left. It's simple math. Whatever time I have left. Like I was already dead to him, just an inconvenient detail between him and his payday. I picked up the emails with trembling hands. I changed your diapers, I whispered. I sang you to sleep when you had nightmares. I loved you more than my own life. And I appreciate that, Mother, he said, returning to his desk, already dismissing me. But emotion doesn't change facts. Sign the papers voluntarily, or we'll have you declared incompetent. Your choice. I walked to his door, paused with my hand on the handle. You're right about one thing, Michael. Your father is dead, but he would be ashamed of the man you've become. I left his office with my dignity intact, but in the elevator I collapsed against the wall, sobbing so hard the security guard asked if I needed medical attention. My son, my firstborn, my miracle baby, had just looked me in the eye and threatened to destroy me, and he'd done it without flinching. I drove home from Michael's office in a daze, but instead of entering my house, I sat in the driveway staring at the place that had suddenly become a battlefield. That's when I noticed Mrs. Patterson watering her petunias next door, and Derek Lawson's words echoed in my mind. Once we control Mom's assets, I can probably pressure the old lady next door to sell. Dorothy Patterson was 82, a widow like me. Had they planned to destroy her life too? Inside, I went straight to Robert's old filing cabinet, the one he'd kept meticulously organized. If Michael had been stealing money, there would be evidence. I pulled out bank statements, retirement account summaries, investment reports, papers I'd trusted Michael to help me manage after Robert died. You're grieving, Mom, he'd said so gently. Let me handle the financial stuff for a while. The first discrepancy jumped out immediately. My retirement account was $60,000 lighter than it should have been. Not taken all at once. That would have been too obvious. Small withdrawals over 2 years. $2,500 here, $3,000 there, each one coinciding with some fabricated family emergency. Patricia's non-existent surgery, the twins' private school, that I later learned his law firm paid for as part of his compensation package. Jennifer's kitchen renovation that she'd told me Richard's bonus covered. But the conspiracy went deeper than theft. I found documents I didn't remember signing. Powers of attorney with my signature that looked right but felt wrong. Property tax payments that had been delayed, creating a paper trail of financial mismanagement. They were building a case against me, document by document, making it look like I couldn't handle my own affairs. The phone rang, jarring me from my horrible discoveries. It was Jennifer, her voice syrupy sweet. Hi, Mom. Just wanted to remind you about Sunday's family dinner. Everyone's coming, it's important. We have something special planned. Special? I managed to ask, my voice hollow. Just, we all want to talk to you about your future, about making sure you're taken care of. She paused. Michael said he visited you today. I hope you're not upset. We only want what's best for you. After she hung up, I called David, my youngest, my gentle one. Surely he wasn't fully part of this. But when he answered, his guilt was audible in every stuttered word. Mom, hi, how are you? Good? That's good. Listen, about Sunday. David, I interrupted, do you know what Michael's planning? Silence stretched between us before he sighed. Mom, you have to understand. The house, it's too big for you, and the neighborhood's changing. Developers are offering crazy money. Michael says if we wait too long, you'll miss out on the best price. And you'll miss out on your cut? The bitterness in my voice made him flinch, even through the phone. It's not like that. I mean, yes, we'd inherit eventually anyway, and this way you'd have money for a nice assisted living place. I'm 68, David. I run 3 miles every morning. I volunteer 20 hours a week. What exactly requires assisted living? Michael says you've been forgetting things, missing appointments, and that doctor, he knows, she evaluated you. She's never met me, I snapped. How could she evaluate someone she's never met? Another damning silence. Then, weakly, Michael said you probably wouldn't remember the evaluation. The full scope of it crashed over me like a wave. They'd been gaslighting me, all 3 of them. Every forgotten conversation, every concerned look when I couldn't recall something that never happened, they'd been planting seeds of doubt about my mental capacity. Jennifer casually mentioning to relatives that Mom's been confused lately. Michael telling neighbors I'd been struggling. David sighing to anyone who'd listen about how hard it was to watch his mother decline. I found more evidence in my email, messages I'd never seen, responses sent from my account that I'd never written. Michael had access to everything. He'd been constructing an alternate version of me, a confused old woman who needed her children to take control. The Sunday dinner wasn't just about pressuring me to sign. It was meant to be a public display of my incompetence, witnessed by extended family who'd been primed to expect exactly that. But the cruelest discovery was a draft email on Michael's forwarded account, addressed to my primary physician. Concerns about Margaret Chen's cognitive decline, request for evaluation. They were going to blindside my own doctor, the one who'd praised my health just last month. Create medical documentation to support their lies. My children hadn't just betrayed me. They'd orchestrated my complete destruction, treating my life like a hostile corporate takeover. And Sunday was meant to be the final hostile board meeting, where they'd vote me out of my own existence that night. I couldn't make it past the living room. I collapsed into Robert's chair, the burgundy recliner I'd threatened to throw out a dozen times, but never could because it still smelled, faintly, of his cologne and pipe tobacco. The documents were scattered across the coffee table like evidence of a murder, which in a way, they were. The murder of trust, the death of everything I'd believed about my family. The sobs came in waves, each one pulling me deeper into an ocean of grief I hadn't felt since the day Robert's heart monitor flatlined. But this was worse. When Robert died, I had my children to hold me up. Now, the very people I'd created with love were the ones tearing me down. My body shook so violently I knocked over Robert's picture on the side table, the glass cracking right across his smile. I'm sorry, I whispered to his photo, my voice raw. I'm so sorry, Robert. You trusted me to take care of them, and look what they've become. Memories flooded back uninvited, each one a fresh wound. Michael at 7, home from school with strep throat, curled against me while I read him story after story until my voice gave out. I'd slept on his bedroom floor that night, my hand on his forehead checking his fever every hour. Now that same child wanted to declare me mentally unfit. Jennifer at 15, sobbing in my arms after her first heartbreak. mascara staining my favorite blouse as she swore she'd never love again. I'd made her hot chocolate at 2 a.m. and told her she was worth 1,000 boys who couldn't see her value. I'd taught her to know her worth, and now she was calculating mine in dollars and cents. David's accident at 23 flashed before me. The call from the hospital, the race through rain-slicked streets, the 3 days I lived in that ICU waiting room, existing on prayer and vending machine coffee. When he finally opened his eyes, the first word he'd said was, "Mom." I'd sold Robert's classic car, the one he'd restored with his father, to pay for David's rehabilitation. Never questioned it, never regretted it. That broken boy was my baby, and I would have sold my soul to save him. But the memory that shattered me completely was from just 5 years ago, the week before Robert died. He'd been lucid that morning, the morphine temporarily beaten back by sheer will. He'd gripped my hand with surprising strength and made me promise something. "Maggie," he'd whispered, his voice like paper rustling. "The kids, they're going to need you. They seem strong, but losing me. Promise me you'll keep them together. Keep them good. Don't let the world make them hard." "I promise," I'd sworn, kissing his forehead, tasting the salt of my own tears. "I'll take care of them, Robert. Always." I'd failed. Failed Robert. Failed my children. Failed myself. Somewhere along the way, while I was busy loving them, they'd turned into strangers who valued property over people, who saw their mother as an investment portfolio to be liquidated. The world hadn't made them hard. I'd somehow raised children who could plan my destruction over casual dinners, who could practice their concerned faces in mirrors while robbing me blind. I found myself on the floor at some point, curled in a ball like a wounded animal, crying so hard I couldn't breathe. My chest felt crushed, like all those years of sacrifice had finally collapsed in on themselves, creating a black hole where my heart used to be. The woman who'd worked 18-hour shifts, who'd gone hungry so her children could eat, who'd spent 40 years pouring love into 3 human beings, who now saw her as nothing but an obstacle. That woman was dying on her living room floor. The clock chimed midnight, and I was still there, empty of tears but full of a grief so profound it felt like drowning in air. Every photo on the walls, their graduations, weddings, birthdays, mocked me. Every sacrifice I'd made seemed like a joke with me as the punchline. I'd built my entire identity around being their mother, and they'd just informed me that role was terminated, effective immediately. "What do I do now, Robert?" I asked the empty room. "How do I fight my own children? How do I stop loving people who've stopped loving me?" The house offered no answers, just the echo of my broken voice bouncing off walls that would soon be demolished if my children had their way. I lay there until dawn, watching the ceiling lighten, feeling something inside me slowly dying. Or perhaps, being born dawn crept through the windows like a cautious visitor, finding me still on the living room floor. My body ached from the hardwood, joints protesting as I slowly pushed myself up. The morning light caught Robert's cracked picture frame, and something about that fracture, straight across his smile but not destroying it, shifted something in my chest. I stood on unsteady legs and walked to the bathroom. The mirror showed a stranger, eyes swollen, face blotched, hair wild from a night of grief. But as I stared at that reflection, I saw something else. Behind the immediate wreckage, I saw Margaret Wilson, the farm girl who'd fought her way through nursing school, the young woman who'd worked 3 jobs while pregnant, the wife who'd held her family together through poverty, illness, and loss. That woman was still there, buried under years of defining herself solely as a mother. "You're not just their mother," I told my reflection, my voice hoarse but growing stronger. "You're Margaret Chen. You survived Robert's death. You'll survive this betrayal." I showered with water hot enough to hurt, scrubbing away the salt of dried tears like I was molting old skin. As I dressed, choosing my navy dress, The one Robert always said made me look like a senator. I felt something crystallizing in my chest. Not quite anger, not quite determination, but something harder and more brilliant. Resolution. In the kitchen, I made coffee stronger than usual and sat at the table where I'd helped with 40 years of homework. But instead of dwelling on those memories, I pulled out a legal pad and began writing. Not a suicide note or a letter of surrender, but a battle plan. First, I wrote down everything they'd taken. $60,000 from retirement accounts, $30,000 for fake medical bills, peace of mind, trust, love. Then I wrote what they wanted to take: my house, my autonomy, my dignity, my remaining assets, Mrs. Patterson's home. Finally, I wrote what I had: evidence of fraud, a sound mind, and something they'd clearly forgotten: 40 years of experience watching Michael prepare cases. I'd learned more about law from his dinner table discussions than he'd realized. The phone rang at 7 a.m. Jennifer checking if I was ready for Sunday. Her voice dripped false concern. "I'll be there," I said calmly, and I heard her slight intake of breath at my steady tone. "You sound better, Mom. Did you sleep well?" "Best night's sleep in years," I lied smoothly, surprised at how easily deception came when survival was at stake. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." "Oh?" The nervousness in her voice was palpable. "About what Michael discussed with you?" "About everything, sweetheart. About family, about the future, about what's really important. All true, just not in the way she assumed. I think Sunday will be a very memorable gathering." After hanging up, I opened Robert's safe, the one hidden behind his father's painting in the basement, the one Michael didn't know existed because Robert had installed it during Michael's first year at law school. Inside, along with our original documents and Robert's service medals, was an envelope I'd almost forgotten about. Robert's insurance papers, yes, but also a business card paper clipped to them. Judge Harrison Matthews, Robert's army buddy from Vietnam, now a federal judge. Robert's handwritten note was still attached. "If you ever need someone in your corner, call Harry. He owes me 3 lives from Da Nang." I held that card like a lifeline. Michael might be a successful lawyer, but he was playing in local traffic. Judge Harrison was the interstate. Then I remembered something else. The bracelet Robert had given me for our last anniversary. The one too precious to wear. He'd had it specially made, insisting on the engraving himself, making me promise to wear it when you need to remember your worth. I'd thought he meant for special occasions. Now I understood he meant for war. I retrieved it from the safe, heavy gold with an inscription I'd never fully examined. As I read the complete engraving in the morning light, my breath caught. Robert, even facing death, had seen something I was only now beginning to understand. He'd prepared me for a battle he somehow knew was coming. Standing in my kitchen, wearing my senator dress and my war bracelet, I made a decision. My children thought they were conducting a hostile takeover of a weak old woman. They were wrong on both counts. I wasn't weak, I was a survivor who'd outlasted everything life had thrown at me. And I wasn't just a woman, I was their mother, which meant I knew their weaknesses better than they knew themselves. "You want to fight?" I said to the empty kitchen, my voice steel. "Then you'll get one. But you forgot who taught you how to fight in the first place." The morning sun streamed through the windows, and for the first time in weeks, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a woman who'd found her spine, steel-reinforced and ready for battle. Judge Harrison Matthews answered on the second ring, his voice gravelly but warm despite the early hour. "Margaret Chen? Robert's Maggie? Good Lord, it's been too long, though I suspect this isn't a social call." Sitting in my car outside the federal courthouse, I spilled everything. The emails, the theft, the planned ambush on Sunday. Harry listened without interrupting, though I heard his sharp intake of breath when I mentioned the forged documents. When I finished, the silence stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. "Those bastards," he finally said, the judicial composure cracking. Pardon my language, Margaret, but Robert saved my life 3 times in Vietnam. His children trying to destroy his widow? Not on my watch. He gave me a name, Sarah Winters, a prosecutor turned defense attorney who specialized in elder abuse cases. She's brilliant, vicious when needed, and owes me a favor. Can you come to my office today? Bring everything. By noon, I was sitting in a conference room with Judge Harrison and Sarah Winters, a woman whose petite frame and soft voice, belied eyes, sharp as surgical instruments. She reviewed my evidence with the focus of a hawk studying prey. The email forwarding was brilliant luck, she said, but we need more. Mrs. Chen, I need you to become an actress for the next 4 days. The plan she outlined was elegant in its simplicity. I would act confused and vulnerable, playing into their narrative while secretly documenting everything. Sarah produced a small recording device disguised as a button. Ohio is a one-party consent state, she explained. You can legally record any conversation you're part of. Sew this onto whatever you're wearing Sunday. But the real mastery was in the legal maneuvering. Sarah had already begun filing protective documents with the court, not enough to alert Michael, but enough to freeze any major asset transfers. Your son's good, she admitted, but he's arrogant. He won't think to check for defensive filings because he doesn't think you're capable of mounting a defense. Judge Harrison leaned forward. There's something else, Margaret. That Dr. Harriet Klein who's supposed to testify about your incompetence? She's under investigation for similar false testimony in 3 other cases. We've been building a case against her for months. Your situation might be the final nail in her coffin. The next phase required me to visit my actual doctor. Dr. Patricia Romero had been my physician for 15 years, and her fury when I explained the situation was beautiful to behold. They claimed someone evaluated you without your knowledge. That's not just unethical, it's illegal. She immediately ordered a comprehensive cognitive evaluation. I spent 3 hours completing tests, brain scans, and psychological assessments. My scores weren't just normal, they were exceptional for any age. You have the cognitive function of someone 20 years younger, Dr. Romero said, printing the results. I'm also writing a detailed letter about your health history, including your marathon completion last year. Yes, I'm mentioning the marathon, and your perfect attendance at the library literacy program. Let them try to argue incompetence against this. Thursday evening, I enacted another part of Sarah's plan. I called Michael, sounding shaky and uncertain. I've been thinking about what you said, I told him. Maybe you're right. Maybe I do need help. Should I bring anything special on Sunday? Any papers? His eagerness was obscene. Just yourself, Mother. We'll have everything ready. I'm glad you're being reasonable. After hanging up, I drove to Mrs. Patterson's house. Dorothy deserved a warning. Over tea and her famous snickerdoodles, I told her about the conspiracy, including their plans for her property. Her weathered face went through several expressions before settling on determination. Those vultures, she said firmly. I'll be at your dinner on Sunday. Dorothy, you don't have to. Hush, I've known you 40 years, Margaret. If they want to declare you incompetent, they'll have to explain why I trust you to be my medical power of attorney. She pulled out a document already notarized. I did this last month, remember? You're the most competent person I know. Friday, Sarah called with another development. We found 3 other families Michael has done this to. Similar pattern. Elderly parent, valuable property, false medical testimony from Dr. Klein. One family lost everything. The other 2 are eager to testify if needed. By Saturday evening, everything was in place. The recorder was sewn into my best Sunday dress. Sarah and her team would be nearby, ready to intervene. Judge Harrison had arranged for 2 officers to be available. The cognitive evaluation was in my purse, and the bracelet, Robert's final gift, was polished and ready. Sitting in my garden that night, watching the sun set over the roses Robert had planted, I felt oddly calm. Tomorrow, my children would learn that their mother wasn't their victim. She was their reckoning. Sunday arrived with the kind of perfect spring weather that felt like cosmic irony. Blue skies and chirping birds for what my children intended as my execution day. I dressed carefully, each piece of clothing a deliberate choice. The navy dress with mother-of-pearl buttons, except the third one was Sarah's recording device. My comfortable shoes, because warriors need stable footing. Light makeup to enhance the illusion of fragility. And finally, Robert's golden bracelet, heavy on my wrist, hidden under my cardigan sleeve. I arrived at my own home at 11:45 a.m., 15 minutes early. The dining room had been rearranged, my usual seat at the head relocated to the middle, surrounded by chairs like a defendant's box. They'd even removed Robert's portrait from the wall, probably thinking it would make me more vulnerable without his eyes watching over me. Michael was already there, pacing in his $1,000 suit, phone pressed to his ear. "Yes, Dr. Klein, 12:30. The family will have gathered their thoughts by then." He saw me and ended the call, his smile as practiced as a politician's. "Mother, you're early, and you look nice." "I wanted to help with lunch," I said softly, noting how Jennifer emerged from the kitchen wearing an apron over her designer dress, playing the concerned daughter for the audience that would soon arrive. "All taken care of, Mom," she chirped, air kissing my cheek. "You just relax. Today is about you." David arrived next, unable to meet my eyes, fidgeting with his phone. His wife Melissa followed, looking uncomfortable, whispering urgently to him until he shushed her. So not all the spouses were in on it. Interesting. By noon, the house filled with extended family. My brother Thomas from Chicago looking confused about the sudden invitation. 3 cousins from Robert's side. Michael's law partner James, who'd always been kind to me. Witness for credibility, no doubt. Jennifer's best friend from college, now a social worker. Another professional witness to my supposed decline. Each arrival was greeted with subtle stage directions from Michael, positioning them for maximum impact. But then came the surprises Michael hadn't planned for. Mrs. Patterson walked in, using her cane but sharp-eyed, kissing my cheek and whispering, "Courage." Behind her, Dr. Romero entered. I'd mentioned the family gathering during my evaluation, and she'd insisted on coming since I was in the neighborhood. Michael's jaw tightened, but he couldn't turn away my physician without raising questions. The greatest shock was when Father Francis from my church arrived. "Margaret invited me," he said smoothly when Michael questioned his presence. "She wanted spiritual guidance for an important family discussion." I hadn't invited him, but Sarah Winters had suggested he might want to attend after she'd made a generous donation to the church building fund. Michael kept checking his Rolex, his carefully orchestrated timeline disrupted. The dining table was set with my best china, using my own belongings against me, with legal documents placed at my seat like a placemat of surrender. Jennifer had prepared what looked like my recipes. The familiar smells a twisted comfort in this hostile atmosphere. At 12:15, Michael clinked his glass, calling everyone to attention. The room fell silent, faces turning toward him expectantly. Some looked curious, others concerned. David was pale, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool temperature. "Thank you all for coming," Michael began, his courtroom voice filling my home. "We've gathered today for an important family matter. As many of you know, our mother has been struggling lately." "Have I?" I interrupted softly, just loud enough to be heard. Several heads turned to me in surprise. Michael's smile tightened. "Mom, please, let me finish. This is for your own good." He turned back to the audience. "We've noticed concerning changes, confusion, forgetfulness, difficulty managing daily tasks. As her children, we can't stand by and watch her deteriorate." Jennifer stepped forward, tears ready on cue. "Just last month, she forgot my birthday completely." A lie. I'd sent her a card and her favorite orchids. "And she's been talking to Dad like he's still alive. We're worried." Thomas frowned. "Margaret seems fine to me. We talked for 2 hours last week about the Ukraine situation. Sharp as ever." "That's the tragedy of dementia," Michael said smoothly. Good moments that mask the decline. We've consulted with a specialist, Dr. Harriet Klein, who's evaluated Mother and confirmed our concerns. When? Dr. Romero's voice cut through like a scalpel. When was Mrs. Chen evaluated? Because I saw her 3 days ago for a comprehensive cognitive assessment, and she scored in the 95th percentile. The room buzzed with whispers. Michael's composure cracked slightly, his hand moving to loosen his tie. The doorbell rang. Dr. Klein, right on schedule, about to walk into a trap she couldn't imagine. But before Jennifer could answer it, I stood, my movement drawing every eye. Before we continue, I said, my voice stronger than anyone expected, I have something to share. I raised my hand to adjust my cardigan, a simple gesture that would have meant nothing except for how the afternoon sunlight streaming through the window caught the gold bracelet as I deliberately let the sleeve fall back. The engraving was clearly visible as I turned my wrist slowly, letting everyone see the inscription that Robert had chosen so carefully. To Maggie, who sacrificed everything, let no one take what you've earned. Judge Harrison, U.S. Army. Michael went rigid, the blood draining from his face as he recognized Judge Harrison's name. The federal judge who'd made headlines last month for prosecuting the largest elder fraud case in Ohio history. His law partner James stepped back unconsciously, already calculating his distance from what was about to unfold. "That's a beautiful bracelet, Margaret," Mrs. Patterson said loudly, playing her part perfectly. "Isn't Judge Harrison the one who just sent those lawyers to prison for defrauding elderly clients?" Before Michael could respond, the doorbell rang again. Jennifer, looking confused by the tension, went to answer it. She returned with Dr. Harriet Klein, a woman whose severe suit and practiced smile faltered when she saw Dr. Romero. "Dr. Klein," I said pleasantly, "how interesting that you could evaluate my cognitive state without ever meeting me. That must be a remarkable medical gift." The woman's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Michael stepped forward, trying to salvage control. "Mother, you're confused. Of course you met Dr. Klein." "No, she didn't." The voice from the doorway was commanding, authoritative. Judge Harrison Matthews entered, followed by Sarah Winters and 2 uniformed police officers. The judge was in casual clothes, but his presence filled the room with the weight of law. "I apologize for being late to your gathering, Margaret. Traffic was terrible." Chaos erupted. Jennifer gasped. David dropped his glass, crystal shattering on hardwood. Michael's law partner was already backing toward the door, only to find it blocked by one of the officers. "Your Honor," Michael started, his voice cracking. "This is a private family matter." "Is it?" Judge Harrison pulled out his phone, pressing play on a recording. Michael's voice filled the room. "From my Thursday call. Just yourself, Mother. We'll have everything ready. I'm glad you're being reasonable." Then another recording, Michael to Dr. Klein. "Remember, she's never to know about the evaluation. Bill me double if needed." Sarah Winters stepped forward, her quiet voice somehow commanding attention. "Mr. Chen, you're being charged with elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy to commit financial exploitation. Dr. Klein, you're under arrest for perjury and fraudulent medical testimony." She turned to Jennifer and David. "You both have the option to testify against your brother in exchange for reduced charges." "This is insane!" Michael exploded, his composure finally shattering completely. "She's my mother. I have every right to protect family assets." "From whom?" I asked, my voice cutting through his tirade. "From me? The person who earned them?" I reached into my purse, pulling out the cognitive evaluation. According to Dr. Romero's tests from 3 days ago, I have the mental capacity of someone in their 40s. But you knew that, didn't you? That's why you needed a fake evaluation. Father Francis stood, his presence lending moral weight to the moment. "I've known Margaret for 15 years. She tutors immigrants in English, manages the church's financial committee, and just last month, she caught an accounting error that saved us thousands. If she's incompetent, then I should resign immediately." The room was electric with tension and revelation. Thomas, my brother, was staring at Michael with disgust. "You were going to rob your own mother? The woman who worked herself to the bone for you?" Then I played my final card. "There's more. Michael didn't just want my house. He and Derek Lawson planned to force Mrs. Patterson to sell too. They were going to demolish both properties for a mixed-use development. Ask him about the $400,000 he's already been promised." Mrs. Patterson gasped theatrically. "My home! You were planning to steal my home too." The police officer stepped toward Michael. "Sir, please turn around and place your hands behind your back." As the handcuffs clicked, Michael looked at me with something between rage and disbelief. "You set me up. My own mother set me up." "No, son," I said quietly, and for just a moment my voice broke with the grief of what we'd lost. "You set yourself up the day you decided I was worth more dead than alive. I just refused to lie down and die." Dr. Klein was already in handcuffs, sobbing about her license, her career. Jennifer stood frozen, tears streaming down her face, real ones this time. David had collapsed into a chair, head in his hands, while Melissa rubbed his back, whispering urgently. Judge Harrison addressed the room. "What you've witnessed today is justice. Elder abuse is not a family matter, it's a crime, and it will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law." As they led Michael out, he turned one last time. "I'm still your son," he said desperately. "No," I replied, steady despite the tears rolling down my cheeks. "My son died the day he put a price tag on his mother's life. You're just the stranger who killed him." The weeks following that terrible Sunday unfolded like the aftermath of an earthquake. Devastating damage assessed, foundations rebuilt, aftershocks weathered. Michael's trial moved swiftly. Sarah Winters had built an ironclad case, and when investigators discovered those 3 other families he'd defrauded using the same playbook, his fate was sealed. 6 months in federal prison, disbarment, and restitution to all victims. The local news covered it extensively. Prominent Columbus attorney sentenced for elder fraud. I didn't watch. Seeing his mugshot was painful enough. Dr. Harriet Klein lost her medical license and received 2 years in prison. During her trial, 7 other victims came forward. She'd been selling false competency evaluations for $5,000 each, building a cottage industry of destroying elderly lives. Her tears in court meant nothing to me. She'd cried while helping sons and daughters rob their parents blind. Jennifer broke completely that day. After the police left, she collapsed in my kitchen, sobbing with the abandon of a child who'd finally understood the magnitude of their cruelty. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. We just thought. Michael said you'd be happier, that we were helping." She testified against Michael in exchange for probation and community service, 500 hours working with elderly victims of fraud. The judge, one of Harrison's colleagues, thought it fitting. She sends me letters now, long ones full of remorse and revelation. I read them, but haven't responded yet. Maybe someday. David surprised me. That gentle boy who'd gone along with his siblings' plan out of weakness rather than malice found his spine in the aftermath. He not only testified but also revealed additional evidence, recordings he'd made of Michael discussing the scheme, saved because something in him knew it was wrong. His probation was lighter, just 200 hours of community service. He chose to do his at the literacy center where I volunteer. We work in the same building twice a week. We don't speak yet, but last Tuesday he left my favorite coffee on my desk with a note. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm going to earn it anyway." The house felt different with the weight of betrayal lifted, but also emptier. Sunday dinners became solitary affairs until Mrs. Patterson started joining me. Then Dr. Romero began dropping by with her teenage daughter who needed math tutoring. Father Francis brought new immigrant families who needed English help. Within 2 months, my dining table was full again. Not with blood family, but with chosen family who valued me for who I was, not what I owned. The most unexpected development came from Melissa, David's wife. She filed for separation the day after the arrests, disgusted by her husband's actions. She brings their daughter Emma to see me every Wednesday. She needs to know that at least one person in this family has integrity, Melissa told me. That's you, Mom. It was always you. Emma is learning to bake using my mother's recipes, her small hands covered in flour, her laugh filling the kitchen with something that feels like redemption. Robert's presence feels stronger now, oddly enough. I rehung his portrait in the dining room, and sometimes I catch myself talking to it. We raised fighters, Robert, I told him last night. They just chose to fight the wrong battle. I imagine he'd be heartbroken, but proud. Proud that I stood up. Proud that I survived. Proud that I chose justice over enablement. The financial recovery was complete. Every stolen penny was returned with interest. Michael's house was sold to pay restitution. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. He'd lost his home trying to steal mine. I took the money and established the Robert Chen Foundation for Elder Protection, providing free legal services to seniors facing family fraud. Sarah Winters runs it pro bono, and we've already helped 12 families. My brother Thomas moved closer, buying a condo 20 minutes away. Someone needs to look after you properly, he said gruffly, but I caught him wiping his eyes. He comes for dinner every Thursday, and we play cards afterward. The same game our father taught us 70 years ago on the farm. The support group I started grew beyond my living room. We meet at the community center now, 32 members and growing. We call ourselves the Silver Survivors, and our stories would break your heart. The woman whose daughter drained her accounts for gambling debts. The man whose son tried to have him committed to steal his pension. We share resources, legal contacts, and most importantly, the understanding that surviving family betrayal is its own kind of grief. At night, I still wear Robert's bracelet sometimes, running my fingers over the engraving. But more often, I wear the simple silver band I bought myself, the one that says Survivor. Because that's what this journey taught me. I'm not just Robert's widow or my children's mother. I'm Margaret Chen, survivor, warrior, and proof that it's never too late to fight for yourself. 6 months have passed since that Sunday when my world shattered and reformed. This morning I stood in my garden. The roses Robert planted are blooming spectacularly this year, as if thriving on truth instead of secrets. Mrs. Patterson was there with me, planning where to put the new memorial bench we're dedicating to victims of family fraud. It's strange how destruction can create space for unexpected beauty. I received a letter from Michael yesterday, forwarded through his lawyer. I haven't opened it. It sits on my kitchen counter like a ghost of possibilities. Maybe it contains an apology, maybe anger, maybe manipulation disguised as remorse. Sarah Winters advised me to let her read it first to protect me from potential emotional manipulation. But I've decided to burn it unopened this evening. Some chapters need to end without epilogues. The greatest tragedy in all of this isn't the money they stole or even the trust they shattered. It's the love that got corrupted into greed. Somewhere between their first breaths and their criminal conspiracy, my children forgot that inheritance isn't about what you can take from your parents' death, but what you learn from their life. I spent 40 years teaching them resilience, sacrifice, and love, but they only learned to calculate the monetary value of my sacrifices. Last week, a woman named Gloria joined our support group. 73 years old, discovered her son had been slowly poisoning her to speed up his inheritance. She looked at me with hollow eyes and asked, "How do you stop loving someone who tried to destroy you?" I told her the truth. You don't stop loving who they were. You stop enabling who they've become. Love doesn't mean accepting abuse, especially from those who should protect you most. The bitter lesson I've learned is this. Sometimes the family you're born into becomes the family you need protection from. We raise children believing love conquers all, that family bonds are sacred and unbreakable. But when those bonds become chains, when that love becomes leverage for exploitation, Breaking free isn't betrayal, it's survival. The hardest battle you'll ever fight might be against the very people you brought into this world. But here's the beautiful truth that emerged from the ashes. Family isn't just about blood. It's about the people who stand with you when you're fighting for your dignity. Judge Harrison, who honored a decades-old promise to a dead friend. Sarah Winters, who took my case not for money, but for justice. Mrs. Patterson, who showed up to bear witness. Dr. Romero, who weaponized her medical expertise for my protection. Father Francis, who provided moral authority when I needed it most. Even young Emma, who still bakes cookies with me every Wednesday, proving that goodness can skip a generation. The silver band on my finger catches the light as I write this. Its single word, survivor. A daily reminder that I chose my own worth over my children's greed. Every morning, I wake up in the house they tried to steal, tend the garden they wanted to demolish, and live the life they tried to declare incompetent. My very existence is my victory. If you're watching this, wondering if something similar is happening in your family, trust your instincts. That uncomfortable feeling when they're too interested in your finances, the subtle suggestions that you're becoming forgetful, the sudden concern about your safety that coincidentally requires signing documents, these aren't acts of love. They're reconnaissance for financial assault. Document everything. Tell someone outside the family. Contact Elder Protection Services. Don't let shame silence you. And remember, choosing justice over toxic loyalty isn't cruel, it's necessary. What would you do if you discovered your own children were planning to rob you? Would you confront them privately and hope for change? Would you pretend not to know to preserve the illusion of family harmony? Or would you fight back like I did, choosing justice over false peace? Share your thoughts below, but more importantly, share this story with anyone who needs to hear it. Because somewhere right now, an elderly parent is sitting at their kitchen table, confused why their child suddenly needs them to sign just a few papers for their protection. Somewhere, a mother is doubting her own mind because her son keeps insisting she said things she knows she didn't. Somewhere, a father is being told his resistance to help is proof he needs it. To those someones, I want you to know, you're not crazy, you're not incompetent, you're not selfish for wanting to keep what you've earned. You're under attack by the people you trust most, and recognizing that isn't paranoia, it's the first step to protecting yourself. Your life has value beyond what you can leave behind. Your story matters more than your estate, and you deserve to live your remaining years with dignity, autonomy, and peace. Even if that means living without the children who forgot that mothers are people, not just pots of gold waiting to be claimed. Remember, we don't stop being warriors just because we got old. Sometimes we become warriors because we got old enough to recognize when it's time to fight.